to recap Sunday of Week 12. Next on Fantasy Football Today in 5. Welcome to FFT in 5. I'm Chris Towers here with Adam Azer, and unfortunately, with 6 teams on a bye in Week 13, Week 12, and especially Sunday, might be like an all-time bad day for waiver wire eligible players who are worth adding. I mean, I wrote the early waiver wire targets column on CBSSports.com, and Pat Freiermuth is really the only guy I have much interest. We'll talk about Pat Freiermuth. We'll talk about some winners and losers from Sunday. But first, let's talk about some of the injuries. And we did have some big ones. Chris Olave left with a concussion. He has had one concussion before in the NFL, had one in college as well. So that's something to keep an eye on. At this point, most players miss a game with concussions. Rashid Shaheed also left with a quad injury. Unfortunately, A.T. Perry, who had some hype coming into this week, he had one catch for 7 yards. So I'm not sure who, if anyone, in the Saints passing game would benefit from those absences, but probably nobody worth adding in fantasy, right, Adam?
Well, you're going to have to really scrape the bottom of the barrel in week 13 in some cases. So Perry's interesting, but I would imagine Alvin Kamara would catch a lot of passes, and maybe
we'll see more Taysom Hill stuff.
Well, right. And if Juwan Johnson's healthy, which I think he is, he might be someone to look at, actually.
Yeah, he left briefly with a head injury, but I think he stayed in the game. Another guy who left with a concussion, Demario Douglas, and the concern here, this is his second of the season. I think he missed week 7 or week 6 with that concussion. So anytime you have multiple concussions in an injury, I think you tend to assume that players will miss more than just the minimum. But at the very least, I'd be surprised if Demario Douglas played in week 13. Amari Cooper also left with a rib injury, and then Browns starting quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson left with a concussion. P.J. Walker has 1 touchdown to 5 interceptions this season. He has 6 touchdowns to 16 interceptions in his career. Are we hoping for Amari Cooper's sake, assuming he's able to play through this rib injury, are we hoping for his sake that Joe Flacco plays in week 13?
I would say so, yeah. I would say that P.J. Walker would be better for sure for Amari Cooper than Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
Yes, based on what we've seen so far.
Yeah. Look, it was a scary hit for Dorian Thompson-Robinson, so I hope he's okay. But it's just he doesn't challenge. He doesn't really do anything. He's just not really going to move the needle for Amari Cooper. I think Cooper
had a couple of bad drops in this one as well, so not a good game overall.
But he did have 2 games with 89 or more yards with P.J. Walker, so it would be interesting if there were just any different quarterback there.
All right, let's move on to the winners and losers. And the biggest winner this week has to be just the Steelers' offense in general. I mean, it actually wasn't a good game for George Pickens or Deontay Johnson because there was just so much volume to Pat Freiermuth. 11 of the 33 targets for the Steelers, 9 catches for 120 yards. Is Freiermuth, he's south of the Trey McBride, Dalton Kincaid group, right? But
Oh, yeah. Look, Cincinnati is one of the best matchups for tight ends.
Yes.
We have seen Freiermuth have big games before. He's definitely a tight end ad. There's no question. But I think he's like David Njoku, where you're getting, 11 points a week or something like that. I don't think you're getting a real difference maker. They still can't throw touchdowns ever. So I don't think the offense is all of a sudden fixed. But no, it's interesting, and it's exciting to have some life at this position. It wouldn't surprise me if he had 20 yards next week, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, we've seen Dalton Kincaid and Trey McBride not show their ceiling the last couple of weeks, but they've still been very useful for fantasy options, especially in PPR scoring. I do think Pat Freiermuth is likely to be a top 12 tight end the rest of the way, and unless you have, one of like 8 guys, you should probably be looking to add Pat Freiermuth this week. And you know who the 8 guys are. I can't go through them all off the top of my head, but if you feel good about your tight end position, it's fine to pass on Pat Freiermuth, but I've got a lot of teams with Kyle Pitts still. I'm going to try to add Pat Freiermuth this week.
Yep.
Who's another winner for you this week, Adam?
Oh, well, did we talk about Kyren Williams? We didn't get to
Not
him
yet.
I mean, this guy, number 1 running back, he took advantage of a great matchup for sure, but he also did it in the passing game. He caught 2 touchdowns, and I talked about this with Heath on the show this just a little while ago. When Cooper Kupp came back, Kyren Williams lost his targets, but Cooper Kupp is not Cooper Kupp right now, so this could actually stick, him being involved in the passing game. I remember when Achane broke out and Mostert also had a huge game. And I said, can you really, like for Mostert, can you be a winner but also a loser at the same time because Achane had such a big role? Well, like don't discount the fact that Royce Freeman split almost evenly the carries with Kyron Williams. So you are going to probably need that passing downs role. And Freeman has done well. Let's give Freeman some credit. He's ran the ball pretty well.
Yes.
So it wasn't all great for Kyron, but there's no question that you can start having confidence in him again. I was a little hesitant this week, just first game back from injury, and it's not going to be Arizona every week. I'm less encouraged by how great he was as a rusher than I am how involved he was as a passer.
Yeah, the next 2 weeks, very, very tough versus Cleveland at Baltimore, though Cleveland could be without Myles Garrett, who has a shoulder injury, so that's something to keep an eye on as well. But 21.3 PPR points per game, at least 17 in 5 of 7 this season. Even against those matchups, I can't imagine a world in which I'm sitting Kyron Williams at this point.
He's a waiver wire pickup. Before, he was. Maybe right before week 1, but
absolutely.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
All right. And then I'll also just throw out there Nico Collins as a winner. Had a big game, over 100 yards, his third 100-yard game of the season. Look, Tank Dell's awesome. I think the Texans might just have 2 must-start wide receivers, which is amazing because they have a rookie quarterback, and I just can't get past how lucky we are that C.J. Stroud has emerged this quickly to be as good of a player as he is to support all these guys. But he's got 20 targets to 18 for Tank Dell over the past 2 games since coming back from the calf injury. Actually, more targets than Tank Dell in each of the 2 games. So don't just write off Nico Collins as, the number 2 wide receiver here. He might be the number 1 moving forward for the Texans. Let's move on to losers. And Adam, who's your biggest loser?
I would say the Bengals. We see Jake Browning play a game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and honestly, again, it wasn't that bad. I think people might overreact a little bit. Mixon is the one I'm really worried about.
Yes.
Higgins, I am concerned that Higgins is actually droppable if he ever gets back. But Chase is the one we should probably talk about. And yes, it is true that 2 of his passes that he caught were deflected balls. But it's also true that he had over 80 yards. And Browning threw for 227 yards against the Steelers. They're playing defense pretty well. So I'm not completely discouraged. I compared it to, do we bench Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall ever? No. But Joe Mixon's not Breece Hall.
Joe Mixon's not Breece Hall. Yeah, that's
Jamar Chase is obviously better than Garrett Wilson. So I'm okay with Jamar Chase. He's obviously not going to be what we thought he would be, but he'll be all right. Mixon, on the other hand, is a clear loser and is someone I'm probably going to want to sit most weeks, except maybe not next week.
Yeah, I agree with that. Mixon has just been a volume-based touchdown, hope for a touchdown RB2 over the past couple of seasons anyway. Now with, the chances of getting a touchdown much lower, the Bengals did not really try to run the ball much in this game, so I don't think we can even view him as that volume-based RB2. I think he's clearly in the RB3 range moving forward. That's Joe Mixon. And that's going to do it for FFT and 5. Make sure you listen to the full episode of Fantasy Football Today for a more in-depth breakdown of Week 12, and we will see you tomorrow.